the importance of knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it. It was a night in 1995. We're running out of money, and it was umpteen people, and we got everybody together. And I said, "Hey guys, look, here's the dilemma. If we did it the old-fashioned way, it would take 24 months. We have 9 months of money, so we don't have 24 months. So we're not going to be able to do it the old-fashioned way. However, here's the problem: why the old-fashioned way was necessary. But suppose we bought this machine from a company that is going out of business. I had heard about this machine. It's called the IQOS emulator. To emulate your chip in this big, huge machine that looks like a refrigerator. If we gave them 3 months of our life, so now all we had was 6 months left. And how that could change the outcome of your company. How that could change the outcome. So let me first paint the picture. The first thing I've told you so far is that what you build and how you build it are related things. But having a passion for how you build something could change how you see the world. Now the second thing I want to tell you is the purpose of your work. In 1993, we were the first company to attempt to make 3D graphics consumerized. This was 1 year or 2 years before the PlayStation 2 was announced. Okay, you guys know the PlayStation 2, right? Okay, all right. The PlayStation 2, by my calculus, is probably the most important consumer 3D machine. It made 3D graphics more pervasive than just about any endeavor, even before we were successful in doing so. But in 1993, 2 years before that happened, we were the first company started to try to attempt to do that for general purpose computing for PCs. And we have an enormous number of competitors, and our technology at this point, with no exception whatsoever, the industry considers to be wrong. It's wrong because the programming model is so different than everybody else's, and all of the challenges of programming our architecture was unnecessary anymore because DRAMs were so inexpensive. And so in 1995, I still remember a very, very difficult night, and Chris Curtis and I were now talking about what should we do. You know, what should we do? We were the first, and when you're the first, and you invented all the stuff that alleviated this huge cost of DRAMs, you felt like you had an advantage, a reason to exist. You might win. All of a sudden, you're the last in the world, or you're the first to do it wrong, however you want to think about it. Now what do we do? Now what do we do? If we were to adopt the same techniques that everybody else adopted, we would be one of 90 people. They were better funded than we are at this point, and we're running out of time, because when you're a startup, money is time, and you're running out of time. And what do you do? And it was rigorous. It was rigorous discussion, or that's talking at each other at incredibly high volumes. Okay, and the question is, what should we do? And ultimately, I think the psychology or the sensibility that won the night is this: maybe we don't know whether we can win if we did it the way everybody else did it, but doing it the wrong way certainly won't lead you to the right place. And so at this point, it is clear we're doing the wrong way, and nobody's going to support our architecture in the way that we define 3D graphics if it's unnecessary. So we decided that night to go home and say, look, we're going to stop doing it the way that we did it before. We're going to stop the fundamental technology that we invented our company to go do, that we still believe in the future of 3D graphics, that we still believed in each other. That was net how we went home. How we would continue to be successful, don't know. What strategy we would find to differentiate ourselves, don't know. And how we would get the rest of the money to build a chip the right way, inverse texturing and Z-buffered and triangle-based, don't know. But those are, in the final analysis, what I would consider details. You know, at this point, although it didn't seem like details at the time, it seems like details now to me. The two things that were quite fundamental that I continue to believe to be true, and would have been enough for me to have started the company altogether, was two things. One, do I believe in that work? Is this something that we would love to do? Is this something that we could be world-class at doing? Is this something that is hard enough to do that we could do for a long period of time? And the question about my teammates. Are these people that I want to go to battle with? Are these people that I want to stay up all night with? And do we believe in each other? Those two questions, if I got the right answers from, would have been more than plenty to start something new. And so we went home. We came back and the next day was where the rubber meets the road, and we said, okay, so one of the founders said, okay, all right, so now we decided that we're going to do this. What's our strategy? What's our strategy to win? How are we going to beat everybody else? We're the last company now. And you guys know this about if you play games, if you enjoy competing, if you enjoy any type of strategy-oriented activities, you know that it's oftentimes good to be first. It's oftentimes good to be last. The benefit of last is that you know what everybody else is doing. Okay, and then the next thing was you have to be very concerned about a company that has no future. And so the reason, let me explain that to you. You know that if you're playing a game to manage your resources, okay, you're playing a game to manage your resources, you could deploy certain types of strategies, and you can't deploy certain types of strategies. However, if you're playing a game and this is your last hand, and you know it, and you're playing it like this is your last hand, and you're not coming back, you're going to play it a little different. Do you know what I mean? When somebody goes all in, they can do things that you can't do because you're trying to manage your resources. It was 1995, and we had the presence of mind to observe these two facts. That we were, in fact, now the last. We can go and study what everybody else is doing first before we decide what to do. And then number two, we're all in. Don't play to come back. Don't play as if there's another hand. And if there is another hand, let that be a surprise, and then we'll go figure out what to do next. And so we literally took everything we had, and we built something that no one else in the world would build. So for example, we built the world's largest non-microprocessor chip ever built at the time. And the reason for that is because I wasn't worried about my cost. If you were running a business, you have costs, you have gross margins, you have financial results you have to manage, but I didn't. I built a chip that physically was as large as anyone could build at the time. Instead of doing all of these hacks in Integer, we just did our entire pipeline in floating point. Why sit there and shift numbers around? let's just do it all in floating point. And instead of doing creating a floating point setup engine that took 30 clocks to set up, we pipelined the living daylights out of this floating point engine and had enough units in there to set up a triangle every clock. Now, in the end, this chip was huge. It was massive. And when we went to try to build it, somebody, TSMC was a small company at the time, they said, you guys, this is nuts. This thing is going to cost way too much. I said, that's good. That's good. We just want to make sure that this is the most powerful chip the world's ever seen. If we're going to leave a mark, okay, if we're going to leave a mark, leave a huge hole. Right? Don't just leave a little tiny divot. Number one. Number two, the challenge with companies at the time was this, and 3D graphics was particularly challenging this way. You have to build a chip first, and then you can develop the software. And after you develop the software to run the chip, you discover there's a bug in the chip. You got to spin the chip, which then you build the chip, you get back, you do the software on top of it. That iteration loop caused the development cycle times to be about 2 years. From the moment you tape out a chip to the moment you get it to the market was about 2 years. Well, we didn't have 2 years. It's not complicated to do some simple math. We had 9 months. We had 9 months of money left. And so we decided that, well, if you have 9 months and it takes 2 years, obviously you don't have 9 months. And so what if I took some of the money and I invested in a machine that makes it possible to do our software development before we taped out the chip. And so at the point of tape out, the chip had to be deemed perfect, because it's the last tape out we're going to do. Okay, so we got our the company was much smaller than this room here, and we could buy their machine and keep them in business for an extra 3 months, and we could prototype our chip, do all the development on top of this emulator, pretend like it's our chip, run all the QA, run all the games, run all the VGA tests, run all the Microsoft tests, so that when I tape out that chip, I know, or I believe, I hope, that it's perfect. And that chip, I will start production on day one, sight unseen. And so they said, Jensen, you've really lost it. You've got, and I still remember these conversations. It's like, 9 months, that extra 3 months, we might be able to find more money. I said, we're not going to find more money. It makes no sense to find more money. I believe in you, you believe in me, but nobody's going to believe in us. There are 90 other companies to go believe in. Why believe in us? We got to do it this way. So we decided that we were going to go and buy this emulator from a company that had no other customers. We have a law in our company: startups don't invest in startups. Okay, startups don't rely on startups, and that's a law because of what I experienced. It is as a Hail Mary of crazy levels, and so we bought this machine with $1 million, 1/3 of our life. We took 1/3 of our life, and we bought this $1 million machine. And because it was 1/3 of our life savings, we made it work. And we brought up Riva 128. Does anybody know Riva 128? Riva 128 is the world's first graphics chip that actually exceeded people's expectations of what graphics chips can do. And there's a lot of reasons why it was so complicated, but to have done that. But anyways, Riva 128 was very important for our company and also for the industry. But ICOS delivered their machine. They stayed around long enough to help us bring it up before they went out of business. And we brought up the entire Windows stack, VGA stack, all of our drivers. We ran it at one frame every 30 seconds, minute or so. We had our QA, we had one QA engineer, Andrew Martin, he still works there at NVIDIA today, and he sat in front of this emulator that ran one frame every 30 minutes or whatever it is, and he QA'd our entire chip that way. He ran every application. He never went to sleep. And on the day that we taped out the chip, I told the guys that we shouldn't tape out the chip if we don't know that it's perfect. If it's perfect, and you think it's perfect, and we've done everything we could to make sure that it's perfect, then we should go to production right away. Now, the good news is we had no money left. Okay, so the bad news is, why would any factory start manufacturing your chips if you had no money left? And so the answer, of course, is don't tell them. And so we had we started the production of Riva 128, and sight unseen we went to production because we're out of time. We had to catch up to the competition, and the chip came back, and fortunately, it basically worked. It basically worked. There were, if any of you in the audience understand 3D graphics, there's these different blend modes about how you manipulate the frame buffer, and Microsoft in DirectX specifies 32 blend modes at the time, and we were compatible with a whopping 8 of them. Okay, and so we explained to our customers that 8 is all you need. Okay, you'd be lucky if you used 6 of them. But what we really did do is we ran out to all of the developers in the world, all the game developers, and we said, please don't use the other 24. Please. If you want to make explosions, you want to make them transparent, could you do it this way? Use that mode. Don't use the other 24. If you use the other 24, we're cooked. We are cooked. Okay? You love a lot of things about Riva 128. Okay, so it doesn't have 24 blend modes. There's a lot of things to love. Okay? I mean, this kid is not perfect, but there's a lot of things to love. Okay? And so it turns out the rest of the industry fell in love with Riva 128 just like we did. We had to love it. It was our only child. And so we ramped up the production and then we went to town. Riva 128 became the world's first 100 megapixel fill rate texture map Z-buffered engine in the world. We made it possible for you to enjoy 640 by 480 graphics with many layers of depth complexity, completely alpha blended, with a CPU on the other side, which was just a 486, running at 100 megahertz. For us to offload enough of the setup, the triangle setup, that you could actually render 3D graphics at 30 hertz. It was the first time that had ever been achieved, and Riva 128 took off. The demand took off.